Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andrew Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Binner and Ash Paulson to discuss our full thoughts on the Champions Ballad DLC for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So let's get started. Alright guys, so we're back again to talk about this one more time because all three of us have finished it now, including you, Ash, who stayed up until 5:30 a.m. last night to beat this thing.
Well, yeah, because someone was like, well, we got to do this discussion tomorrow morning, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, so I guess I'll just stay up and finish, and I was trying to finish it anyway, I didn't know it was going to need to be, like, last night, but,
I'm surprised it took you till 5 a.m., because when we left off, you were booking it through your third champion set, so I'm like, well, okay, he's not going to take that long at least.
Well, I hadn't eaten, so I had to break for a super late dinner.
Food is for the weak.
I know, right? Totally. Food is for the weak, but I needed some brain food to get through that, that labyrinth, that new dungeon, so, I needed to, be able to figure that out, and thankfully no crazy rotating shenanigans. I was dreading that, and thankfully no.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so you actually are the last of us to beat it, or rather the most recent one of us to beat it, even though I beat it just a few hours before you. But seeing as you are the one to have finished it most recently, about 5 hours ago at this point, let's start off with your impressions. So what did you think of it overall?
Overall, I liked it. I think it came out ahead. There are parts of it that I do not like. That one-hit obliterator nonsense can go die in a fire. I hated it. I think that was the dumbest, worst possible way to open up that new quest line. It's just, especially for players who may not necessarily be as good at the game, it felt like a cheap way to, increase the difficulty for people like us who had played most or all of the game, or who found all the shrines, gotten all their heart containers. It just felt like an unnecessarily cheap way to increase the difficulty for those kinds of people.
Yeah.
So I was cheap right back, and I just cheesed the whole thing with arrows. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to get close to anything, and I'm going to use bomb arrows.
How everybody did it.
Yeah. And so, that worked out, but I didn't like that part at all. But the other stuff I did, I have to say.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I think that was just a really, really, really poor way of starting off the DLC. It leaves such a bad impression, which people know from our past discussion. I'm like, well, screw this. I'm out. I don't want to deal with this.
I'm surprised you beat it, because you were saying, I don't think I'm going to bother, or about, when it first came out.
I think I was partially motivated to go back only so we could have a more in-depth discussion like this and see if the rest of, did change my mind to see if it was worth it. And we'll get to that. But yeah, I thought that was a poor way of starting it. I don't think the idea in and of itself was bad. I think it would have been a fine challenge elsewhere. But to start off this new quest with, for many people, it's the first time they're playing this game within months or 4 months. I thought it was not a good opening. And though, yeah, as you mentioned, you can cheese through it, and I think we all did to some degree. I saw some comments in our reaction video being like, well, just use bomb arrows or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you can, but that also kind of feels like you're undermining the entire point of that, too. It's like, why is this even here? If you can just cheese your way through it. So,
exactly.
The whole thing felt misguided to me, and I still don't even like how, putting all that aside, the way the DLC opens in general, with you going back to the Shrine of Resurrection, just grabbing this weapon that seems like it just appeared randomly, didn't feel like it meshed in well with the rest of the game. It's like, here's this trigger to start the DLC, and this opening challenge doesn't really blend in with the rest of it either. But then, after that, I felt like it did start to improve.
Mm-hmm. I when I first started with the one-headed obliterator, I was dying constantly, because I was trying to relearn buttons at that point, too. Because it had been a while, and of course I get to do the fun part of doing this in front of a stream, so of course I'm failing miserably a lot of the times early on. But I feel like after I did the first two, I started getting into a groove where I actually was kind of enjoying it and enjoying the challenge of it. Once I had a better grip on thing, I was utilizing all of my techniques and things available, and I don't know, I got some funny laughs out of the fact that I kept running into damn spikes. Those things killed me more often than enemies. I'm gonna run this way. Oh shoot, I probably should turn the camera. Spike.
Wait, are you talking about the shrine? About that specific shrine with the spikes?
No, even in the overworld, because they had a bunch of spikes set up. So I at one point I killed all the enemies and I was about to do the whole thing where they said, "Yay, you did it! Here's the shrine." Ran into a spike and died.
I'm shocked I didn't.
Yeah, I actually don't remember the spikes at all in the overworld. I do remember the spikes in that terrible, terrible shrine, though. during that same challenge, which I actually forgot about those shrines until just now. Because so there's 16 new shrines in this. 4 of them are in this opening segment. And again, the opening segment, it feels so weird to me. The entire thing about it does not fit it all in with the rest of the DLC, in my opinion. But yeah, so I had heard some impressions from people be like, these are some of the best shrines in the game. Like, alright, I'm ready for some of the best shrines. Like, get to that freaking Spike Shrine, which I think was the second one I played, and I thought that was a terrible, like, that played into the whole terrible opening of the DLC for me. Because the one-hit kill sucked, because then you have to wait for the loading screen and restart the entire thing from the very beginning. The hitboxes on those spikes is insane. Like, I was getting pegged constantly when I was nowhere close to them. And then when you reach the final segment where you have to run through, like, it felt like a platforming challenge from like Mario or something. Except
I was thinking Crash Bandicoot because it was coming back from the behind, so I thought I had to run like that, and immediately ran into a spike.
Nice.
And the controls sucked for that part too, because Link, he doesn't turn that nimbly at times. So he would like just fall off ledges without grabbing them, or sometimes he wouldn't grab the block he's supposed to climb up. So everything about that shrine I hated. Luckily, the rest of the shrines weren't that bad, so I prefer them much more to that one.
That's funny. I know what shrine you guys are both talking about, and that was, I mean, I had my own problems with, that part of the DLC, but that one I beat in one go. I didn't have any problems with that one. I'm surprised.
It took me about 3 tries. Like, once I got the hang of it, I actually kind of enjoyed it, but that was also because of the running gag of spikes being my enemy. So having a shrine full of them was just like, okay, this is entertaining for people. It was kind of funny, like some of the like that shrine was kind of annoying, but then you get to the one that's like, oh boy, this might be interesting because it's one of those like a major test of strength, and you do it, and it's like, well, this was easy. Like, I like the little curve they throw where you have this underground section after you beat the main one, but it's still like, I expect that to be harder.
No, see, okay, I see that's actually, I actually like that one. I love that. I'm glad. First off, I typically hate those shrines anyway. The test of strength ones, these got repetitive and redundant. I got tired of taking on those guardians,
mini guardians.
So the fact that this one was a pushover was great, and I like that it subverted your expectations with the whole underground portion of it. So I actually like that one. I thought that was a cool twist on what we had expected, especially because I'm like, oh god, really one of these again?
I agree with you, Andre. I like that shrine, and I also like how it was very subtly called a major test of strength plus, just to kind of give you the, if you're not paying attention, you wouldn't know. But when you go back, it's like, oh yeah, so they did kind of, do something a little different there. What's funny is I actually like that one too, but that was the one where I had trouble, and to be fair, it was completely due to my own stupid mistakes. But I got to, I think 2 or 3 times I got to the last room and just kept screwing up with the guardian on the top level shooting a laser at me, and I kept thinking I was in the right place to avoid it, but I wasn't, and I kept dying, and completely my fault. But Andre, I'm saying that because I know what you mean about, obviously, the one-hit obliterator stuff, dying over and over again, even if it is due to my own stupid mistakes. Having to sit through that loading screen and get back to that point sucked. So I totally, even though I didn't have trouble with the spike shrine, I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And then we had the rolling ball shrine where you had to catch it in that little cup and then put it where you needed to go. And at one point I did stop just caring about going after the extra chests. Because I was like, first of all, I'm streaming this, so of course I was trying to get through it so people weren't stuck in the same shrine with me all the time as I'm trying to figure it out. But I have seen some, like, I'm not sure if you guys saw this. There's a little video going around on Twitter of somebody catching the chest and popping it next to him, and it slides out. Yeah, in the cup. They caught the chest in the cup, and they bring it over to themselves and go to dip it over, but it, like, shimmies somehow, and the chest falls right into Link's head and kills him immediately.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think
that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if what I did was the way you were supposed to do it. I don't remember what I ended up doing, but I bopped the chest over to that little ledge by the ladder. Is that what you did too, Derek, or did you even bother with it?
I did that once, and then I accidentally didn't grab the ladder and just went careening off.
Oh, okay.
so the next time I did it, I caught it. But yeah.
Gotcha.
I just caught it and brought it over to the platform. Like, I don't recall that being tricky. You're talking about the one where you have to catch the chest in the little cup, right? The little magnesis cup?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think I grabbed, I dropped it a few times, but I just kind of grabbed it and pulled it on over to the platform.
The problem for me is, one, it was tough to gauge the depth of where the cup was to go. So I caught it a couple of times, but when I did catch it, then it would just fall out of the cup when I moved it toward me. Like, it didn't feel like it wasn't like weighted down inside the cup.
Just it takes a very light. You have a very light, delicate touch, Andre. That's all it is.
I guess so. Yeah, gently caress it.
Coax it.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And then what was the fourth? I don't want to talk about every shrine in depth, but since we've already covered 3 of the 4 here, what was the fourth one in this segment?
I'm trying to remember what the fourth one was.
Yeah. Was it the light shrine?
Yes, the light. That's right.
Yeah.
Path of Light, I think it was called.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, where it was all dark. That was pretty cool.
I actually thought, I think that actually was one of the cooler ones, because it's one we hadn't seen before at all. I don't think we've seen like an all-dark shrine with these beams of light piercing that darkness, which is really a cool effect.
I actually liked that one a lot. I thought it was really cool.
And it was honestly really creepy. Like, you're getting towards the end, and all of a sudden the mini guardians start showing up, and you're like, oh, God, no.
Yeah. That was cool. I thought that one was done quite well.
So I will say that as I was going through that portion of the DLC, I started to hate it less and less because once you remember the controls and start understanding the limits of your weapon, how you can use the arrows, like it gets easier to get through it. Especially because I think that first area that most people probably went to, being the forest, really is the worst part to start that challenge. I swear to God.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're thinking about. You got the bats flying around. You got the goblins or moblins, whatever, attacking you from all directions. But once I got past that and got into the meat of the DLC, the bulk of the DLC, and this may surprise some people, I actually don't hate this DLC.
I'm surprised at least.
So it's still, overall, to me, like, it's still disappointing me in that it's not at all what I expected. I don't think, with as little as what Nintendo said about it, it's still not what I think most people had envisioned based, what it could be based on that. But it's, despite that, once I got past what it wasn't and what I thought it should have been, what it is still pretty fun, I thought. And I enjoyed going around the world, looking for these general areas based on the pictures, which reminded me of the Mario Odyssey puzzles, like with the moon pictures. And we have to find, like, based on the map, like, where you have to go to solve these little puzzles, which then creates a shrine. And then once you solve all those, you go to the Divine Beast, you have the repeat boss fights, or kind of whatever, and then you move on to the next section. So yeah, on the whole, I just kind of like that whole, like, that little loop there. Yeah, what did you guys think of the rest?
When I first started doing those picture challenges, I had a terrible first impression because everybody wanted to see Rivali first, so I went to Rivali's shrine, and I was trying to figure those out and trying to figure those. And I'm like, God, I don't remember this map at all, and I forgot that there was an in-game picture taker, so I was taking screenshots and going back and forth. Like, I was doing it the completely wrong way. I grant you that, but it was still like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? Where do I go? And, obviously the one was based on a dragon. So I thought, oh, okay, I just have to hit the dragon at any point and I'll be able to get what I need. No, they want you at that specific spot. So I wasted so much time chasing around Denral to try to get that one good shot and just not working. And then I had to work on Rivali's other challenge, like when you had to hit the 4 targets in one go. That gave me trouble. Like, that was just an awful one to start out with, but then I came back to it the next day, started working through the other challenges. I'm like, okay, now I'm having fun with this. Now I'm seeing where I need to go, what I need to do, the variety of what I can do, what exactly they expect of me. And I, like you with the one-hit obliterator, I started having a lot more fun with it.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that part of the DLC as well, just that overall loop. I really enjoyed just going out, like you said, Andre, and exploring the world, and potentially exploring areas that I might not have explored as fully earlier. I mean, obviously, I've already found all the shrines and stuff, so there's, other than Korok Seed, nothing that compelling to find anymore. But at the same time, just looking at the world in different ways and seeing little nooks and crannies of it that I hadn't before, that's kind of rewarding and cool in itself, because part of the appeal of a game like Breath of the Wild is exploring. And so I did get a bit of that. I have to say, like, even though I had completed the game and explored 140 hours, I got a bit of that feeling back when I was like, oh, I'm finding these trials and I'm doing, like, I'm shield surfing down Mount HEBRA. That's something I wouldn't necessarily have done before. Or I'm swimming up waterfalls in the Zora region, or whatever. Like, these cool little challenges that make use of the world in new ways. And I actually thought that was pretty cool. I can totally see where Derek ran into problems, though, and I did get a little frustrated. I think some of the map pictures can be a little hard to read.
Yeah, they can.
Just like, I feel like maybe unnecessarily hard. I feel like they could be maybe just a little easier to read, like map features and such. I'm not saying give it to me. I'm not saying point me in the right direction, but maybe just make it a little easier to read the topographical
Real
features.
quick, there was one part where I think it was one of the lava shrines where I was confused about, like, I misread where the image cut off and where the shrine pillar thing started, and I thought that was like a part of a landmass, so it totally threw off my perception of what I was looking for on the map itself.
Oh no.
Well, I had a similar but different problem where because I hadn't played the game in enough time, I kept just, for some reason, telling myself that anything blue I see off in the distance is probably a completed shrine, and I just wasn't really thinking about it. So there's that one water trial where you have to paraglide off into the distance, follow the morning light. And I saw where I needed to go, but for whatever reason, I know there's another shrine in the ocean there that you go in the regular game, and I just figured, oh, that's that completed shrine. So I just kept trying to paraglide off in the distance. I'm like, where? I know I'm not misinterpreting this hint. Where is it? And of course, that blue thing way down there was just the thing the little gate that I needed to pass through. And and for some reason, because it's the same blue, I'm like, well, that's not it. So where is it? And of course it was, and I eventually figured it out. But I kind of wish they had made, the little whatever gates you need to pass through or whatever in the distance, maybe green or just a different color that isn't the same blue.
That's true.
Of all the completed shrines. But then again, I know it's all the same Sheikah technology.
Yeah, I was going to say it goes against the whole theme.
Exactly.
Right?
So I get it.
That shrine, I didn't notice where I needed to go at first, so then I finally noticed and I was like, okay, I gotta go down there, and I was gliding, just as I was about to reach it, disappears.
I actually any of those ring challenges, I love those.
Me too.
Those are probably my favorite part of the DLC, actually. I wish those were in the main game. Those were fun, and I also liked, for whatever reason, that TikTok sound, I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was one in particular, too, the one where, the Death Mountain region one. I'm like, this feels so much like Pilowings. Like, I want Pilowings in a world
that was
this
cool.
big.
Speaking of the Death Mountain challenges, I also liked the, what are they called? The rock monster ones. I can't remember what the actual names of the monsters are called right now, but the fire version of the rock monster, the lava one. I liked it because even though it's the same fight, the environment changes up how you approach it. The fact that it's in lava, so you have to use the updraft you create. You have to, probably use an ice arrow. Well, at least what I did. I used ice arrows to fire it, and then use the updraft to, paraglide on over and hit it with a sword. Mm-hmm. But I just like that, the fact that it's in lava and the environment in general completely changes how you approach that fight.
Oh yeah, it was a fun. They had a lot of fun things like that where you take on certain challenges or fight certain monsters and make your way through that. And it did change things up. And I can't remember all of the shrines, but I did like the shrines that they unlocked and that you had to do, and they were fun and unique and sort of carried on for what they were. And I think that's where you really did see the creativity of a lot of these. And they all tied into each of the elements as well, which I kind of enjoyed.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean by that?
So if you went to one for Mifa, there was a bunch of water-based shrines for the puzzles. If you went to Rivali, there's a lot of ones that used wind, and you had to use the glider.
Oh man, I didn't even pick up on that.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Like Urbosa has all the electricity-based challenges, and
I totally didn't even notice that. That's interesting. So yeah, for the shrines themselves, like I thought they were fine overall. Fine shrines. I didn't think. They didn't blow my mind. Like I was expecting a little bit more based on some of the impressions I saw. With like, these are the best shrines in the game. Like, all right, I'm ready for some really good challenges. And I was playing through them like, well, most of these felt like they could have just been shrines elsewhere in the game. I did appreciate that none of them were actual trials of strength or whatever. So I like that about them. Aside from that, they were fine. There were some I liked. There were some I didn't like. I'm trying to think of
I know you did that one video where you showed how you cheesed the one.
Oh yeah. So that was one I did not like, where you had the large wall of water and you had to guide the ball into the thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm sure, I'm tired of trying to figure out the exact way to get this ball here, especially because the physics are really wonky there. Like, you couldn't tell where exactly your where your ice block was going to go. It was hard to position it just right. And it was hard to gauge, like, even when you did, it was hard to gauge, like, how much of a gap there was between the barriers nearby. So if the ball hit it wrong, it would, like, lose its momentum. I'm like, screw this. So the ball got stuck at some point, and I could reset the puzzle. I'm like, no. So I just skydived, or, flew over to it, and then I just shot a bomb arrow right into it, and it also took Link out mostly, and that launched the ball into the little cup it needed to get into. I'm like, good, I'm done with that. Thank God.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I actually similarly struggled with that. Shrine, I didn't really have trouble placing the ice blocks, but I just was having trouble, like you said, Andre, with the physics and like, okay, how are these how is this ball going to react to this block placement exactly? So I struggled for probably 15 minutes, and then I just started trying like a new tactic, and I just happened to get lucky where I placed a block there's like what I was originally doing was where there's that first gap where the game makes you think that you want the ball to go across that gap. So once I figured out that that's not necessarily the best approach, I started letting it fall through the first gap and then trying to play with the blocks there. I placed a block so perfectly that it just happened to hit the corner and just kind of roll right along, right where it needed to, in only one block. I didn't need to place 3. I placed one block, but that was after like 15 minutes of struggling, of course. But I just got lucky, and I'm just like, wow, I didn't need 3 blocks. It hit that one corner perfectly, and that was it.
I would not be surprised if not a single person in the world beat that temple as intended.
Probably,
I think I did. I'm not sure. I'll have to review the footage, but whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anyway.
I do have a question for how you guys did a particular shrine. The one I probably had the most trouble with out of all the new ones was, I think it was called Secret Stairway. I think it was one of Mifa's trials where you have to build. There's like one giant wall of water.
That one. Oh,
and you have to build a staircase out of Cryonis blocks and those metal magnesis blocks that you can move around. And I struggled so much with that one.
I was there for so long working on that, trying to figure out what I needed to do. And the thing is, even when I finally did it, I didn't fully understand what the heck I did.
Right.
So that one didn't give me that much trouble. Like I had that initial struggle, but for whatever reason, like it didn't take me that long. So it's interesting how like everyone has these shrines like they have trouble with and others don't. But yeah, I will say in that one though, it was tricky for me in that like you can end up in these odd positions where you can't see what's happening with the rest of it. So I think I just got lucky with my initial with the initial format. I decided to move the blocks in. And
how did you? Were you able to like snap from Cryonis to stasis quickly enough because you have to get the metal blocks up above a Cryonis block so that the Cryonis block supports it.
What I would do, what I eventually figured out is I'd use a Cryonis block to lift it up, grab the other smaller metal block to lift it further up, hold it in place that way, and then use another Cryonis to push it out, and that would build it up.
See, okay, I couldn't figure out what to do. I could not figure out, I thought you had to switch between them. I'm like, you can't do this. There's no way you can do this fast enough. So I got really creative, and I went through my inventory. I'm like, what am I missing here? I ended up using octo balloons to lift the metal blocks without having to do anything.
That's awesome.
And it was so easy.
Genius.
It was great.
Genius.
I had 85 octo balloons. I'm like, well, I never use these in the main game. Let's just see what happens. And lo and behold, they're lifting up this block for me. And I'm like, this is great. Why didn't I use these earlier? This is so cool.
I love that. That is brilliant.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
And I was just like, I don't know what to do.
And I can honestly say that's a unique way to do it because if I'm remembering the chat, because I was looking at the chat quite often trying to figure out how to do this. Nobody suggested octo balloons.
It took me. I literally went through every inventory page, and I was like, I don't know. And then I just figured I would try it. And what's funny is when I went to look for solutions after the fact just to see, I found that solution. So I do not claim credit for being a genius who found this. Someone on YouTube already found it, but it worked. So I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds way easier.
and I also found more traditional solutions. I had to look at the whole whatever was available. I'm like, how did you guys do this? I want to know how every player beat this damn shrine. And I found some more traditional solutions, but I found the Octoballoon one as well. I'm like, oh, so somebody else did think of that. So but that was a very easy way to do it.
That's cool. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that. So, but I barely used octoballoons in the main game itself. So.
I used it when we were trying to do the airship videos.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Good times.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that's how desperate I was. I'm like, okay, I literally don't know what to do, but I don't want to ask for help yet, or I don't want to spoil look on YouTube. So let's just try my inventory, and I found something, and. That, just the fact that we're having these discussions and the fact that even worked, I have to say, is kind of emblematic of, despite whatever issues I've had with Breath of the Wild, not a lot of other games can lead to conversations like this, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's true. I one of the best things about Zelda Breath of the Wild is, in a general sense, that open-ended nature, but also I love the fact that all the puzzles are physics-based. In almost every other Zelda game before, they were all very clearly triggered. It's binary. It's it's either this way or that way. Here, there's any amount of in-betweens. It really adds a new element to these puzzles where there are multiple solutions just based on how the physics work in the game.
Yeah.
And actually, speaking of which, there are a couple of shrines. Basically any of the shrines besides the aforementioned ball one, even that to a degree, that used the motion controls. The shrines here made me realize I really don't like the motion controls for controlling puzzles in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had the same problem.
Yeah, okay. The one that comes to mind immediately is the one where, I guess it was a secondary puzzle in this shrine, but still annoyed me, was where you had that beam of light you were controlling, but with a controller, and there was like this leg to it, it had this weird momentum, and you had to activate the 5 diamonds or whatever to trigger the platforms. Yeah. That was a complete nightmare. Like, that was just a garbage puzzle.
The other one was lining up the shot so you could shoot through the thing that you're manipulating.
That was the one that just drove me up the wall. Oh my god, trying to spin that thing to get it to line it just right so you can shoot the ball through the hole. I like the wet. I don't know. I feel like there was nothing lined up properly about the way I was holding the controller versus the orientation of that thing. So I'm like, I had no reference point for which way I was supposed to rotate the controller to go the way I wanted to in the game. It drove me crazy.
So I have 2 little stories about that. One is I have a controller like all over the place, upside down and backwards and whatnot, and it got to the point where I finally had a position I needed it to be, the platform or whatever, the box or the whole thing, and I couldn't find the B button on the controller to cancel it.
I've definitely had that issue.
I had the same issue.
And then the second time was, I forget exactly what happened, but I got the thing into the position I wanted it to be, but then I had the bomb all ready to go, but then there was a timing element to it too, right? So I think I fell off at one point, and I couldn't see what I was doing. I was at this weird angle to the bomb launcher, so I'm like, oh god, I hope this works. I don't want to set this up again. I just launched it, and thank god it worked. So it hit the target or whatever. I was pretty happy about that. I would have had a very different impression had that not worked, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. There was one shrine I particularly liked. I think it was one of Rivali's shrines, where it was all the ice blocks that you have to kind of melt in specific ways to proceed. And I liked the one, I liked the kind of the little part at the end where you had to get the ice blocks small enough to get through the little grate at the end to then use a cryonis block and put the ice block on top of it to get to the monk. I thought that was kind of a cool. I just didn't, you don't work with ice blocks very much in Breath of the Wild in general. So I thought it was kind of cool to have a shrine kind of all about them and just kind of figuring out how to deal with them.
Oh my god! So I'm gonna skip ahead real quick here because it's fresh in my memory. So speaking of cryonis, I was in the Divine Beast last night trying to finish it, and I got to the room with the water on the ground that's like split in half, and you have the faucet you have to turn on and off, which affects water levels in the room. And I did all that. I launched an orb across the room to activate the faucet, and I was pretty much done, except I was on the half with the terminal you have to activate that's off the ground. And I was trying to figure out, man, how in the hell do I get up to that thing? So I tried turning the faucet even more, seeing if I could raise the water level higher, and I was just totally confused. And then suddenly I'm like, oh right, I can just use cryonis to create a platform to climb up to it. I felt so stupid.
Yeah, it's funny how often, because I happen to be a lot within the Divine Beast where you're like, oh yeah, I got to use this power, I got to do this thing, because you get one idea in your head and you stop thinking about the other methods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get locked into that method, especially because I don't think any other place in that Divine Beast uses cryonis. Maybe there's one other place, but yeah, it didn't feel like it meshed quite well with the puzzles I had been doing, so that threw me off. Even if it is very obvious in hindsight, but.
It's funny. We keep calling it a Divine Beast, and that actually ties into one of my problems with the DLC, and it kind of goes back into a complaint that you had, Andre, at the beginning, where you were saying how you didn't feel like it was integrated particularly naturally into the game, and that part, I don't necessarily agree. I didn't mind I thought it was kind of cool going back to the Shrine of Resurrection where it all began and seeing this new thing. I get what you're saying, Andre, but I didn't really mind that. I thought it was kind of cool.
So real quick, I don't mind going back to the shrine. I think that's a cool idea, especially with how it ties in later. I just thought I thought the challenge itself felt so arbitrarily added with this new weapon that's never been hinted at before, that it just felt disconnected to me from the rest of the game.
No, I hear you, and that actually goes into what I'm about to say, which is I didn't really like how they just kind of hand-waved, oh, you're in a Divine Beast now. It seems like they just called it a Divine Beast because they didn't really want to come up with anything new. It wasn't a Divine Beast. They were calling it that, but it's not that, and if it had been, I wish they would have, massaged that into the lore, hey, there's a Divine Beast underground, underneath the Shrine of Resurrection that's been there for,
Did you say Shrine of Erection?
Oh, is that what it sounded like? That's so funny. Shrine of Resurrection, but it's been there for millennia, and it was never completed or something, some backstory. But I don't like that you just go down into this labyrinth that's basically a glorified trial, but they just call it Divine Beast because it kind of looks like one from the interior. They just didn't want to come up with something else, and I'm like that I didn't like that so much.
Well, especially because they had the perfect way to incorporate it in a way, because as we touched on before in our earlier discussions, there is that fifth Divine Beast already hinted at in the game with the mole, I think, as I recall.
And I thought that's what they were going for.
Yeah,
I'm like,
with
oh,
it
that's
being
really
underground.
cool.
Yeah.
Like, they actually used that, and then it's like, nope, they sure didn't. It's just they're calling it a Divine Beast, but that's not at all.
Yeah,
what
it's
it
not
is.
a beast. You don't see it. You never see it from the outside. You're only
Exactly.
in the inside.
And even looking at the map, there's no real sense of what shape it is.
Yeah. So I guess, to touch on the grander point here before we talk more about the temple itself. I agree with you, Ash. I mean, I think, ultimately the complaints I had before still stand. I don't think the DLC was integrated particularly well with the base game. I still think, for me, it would have been preferable. For me, there are any number of things that have been preferable to what we got. But, ultimately, I was expecting something more separated or distinct from the main game. The way this kind of like, tried to like fit it into the existing game with, especially pre-beating Ganon, felt weird to me, and it does feel out of place, especially with how elaborate this it's essentially a side quest. It's essentially a side quest you're going through here, but a really elaborate one, but one that doesn't really do too much beyond what's already in the base game. So it's a very, I don't know, the whole thing is a little bit weird to me, and how they kind of slot it in here. It doesn't really mesh with the rest of the game, but I still enjoyed it, even though it's weird.
Yeah. That's a very good way to sum it up, actually.
Yeah.
I kind of feel much the same way.
I pretty much agree. I mean, it's just, it was sort of like, it was kind of cool to go back to the Shrine of Resurrection and have it be below, but the fact that it didn't have any real shape, like, I was trying to figure out what shape it was, and best I could come up with is like an engine block for the Master Cycle Zero eventually, since that was technically the Divine Beast. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, it never really came at I liked how by the end of the side quest, it was like, all right, you're basically ready to take on Ganon. Go for it. That was kind of cool, how they summed it up like that. But you're right, how it doesn't mesh completely well, because you think, all right, done with the Divine Beast. Like, I'm kind of curious how well it would mesh if I didn't already beat the game and was just playing through it the first time and had a DLC already integrated. And, I completed the last Divine Beast. By the way, if you go back here, we can do this. I'm curious how that would go.
That's a really good question, because I'm not, on the one hand, I can see it from a story perspective. I think it's better, because it is weird when it's like, hey, you're ready to take on Ganon. It's like, well, I've already done that. Not within that save file, but I've already done it myself. As I'm sure most people probably have. On the other hand, though, while it would fit better from a story perspective, from a gameplay one, it feels so very different. It kind of worked for me because it's been so long since I've come back to the game. It felt like, like I mentioned, in a really elaborate side quest. But if I were just playing through the game normally, this segment would stand out as being very different from the rest. Yeah, I think so, because it's the rest of the game.
It's not the same quest setup as the other Divine Beasts.
Yeah,
Sure.
It's not at all, and it's more structured and. It's more structured than the rest of the game. Like, the rest of the game, the whole appeal is, hey, go wherever you want, do whatever you want. Here, it's kind of like, still has elements of that, but it's very much a more guided experience. Like, you go to these, 4 specific places, you do the things there, then you move on to the next place, and you can do them in any order, but it's still a very structured experience, I would say, compared to the rest of the game. Now, I actually kind of like that. I actually kind of like that it was structured, and it kind of felt like it was building up to something. Which I felt maybe the rest of the game kind of lacked. So maybe I wish there were more elements in the DLC in the rest of the game. But I do think, I don't know, if I were playing through the game the first time, I think that might be a weird mishmash there.
I think it would fit naturally without the beginning and the ending parts. So by that I mean I feel like it would feel natural if you were playing through it for the first time without the one-hit obliterator parts and the final trial, the quote-unquote Divine Beast. But if it was just the 4 Divine Beast, sets of trials where you go and find the trials and then you do the boss refights, and then you get the new memories. Those parts alone, I think, could slot in and feel like they belong into the main game. But the one-hit obliterator stuff and the last trial with the labyrinth, those definitely do feel like they stand out like sore thumbs. So I do think parts of the DLC, though, do feel like they would slot pretty neatly into the main game.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the fact that we did get a new dungeon. Granted, it was, just a remix of the 4 different bits. Like, when I was first playing it, I immediately thought to Ganon's Castle on Ocarina of Time, and how each section you went to was like, oh, this is based on the Spirit Temple, this is based on the Fire Temple, that kind of thing. And I like that element, but it was also, needing to figure out, okay, I gotta slot this into here so I can make these turn and figure this out. And it's like, it was fun to have, but it wasn't amazing, I guess.
So, the temple's weird for me, because once I got into it, I really started liking it. But it was getting into it that was a tricky part. Like, when I first got to it, maybe it was because I was really tired too, but I'm like, what the hell do I do here? I have no idea. Like, I found this block, and I don't know where to put it. And once I started understanding, like, oh, it's a machine, and you need to connect these parts, I'm like, okay, that's actually pretty cool. And how, each area kind of plays on the other ones. I like that. But yeah, it was like getting into that initial part, like getting past the initial barrier, that was tough for me.
Yeah, I actually had the same experience, and I think I feel the same way about this labyrinth that I do the rest of the dungeons and the regular dungeons in Breath of the Wild, which is, mechanically it's complex and it's cool, and like, I love the aha feeling you get when you figure out, like, oh, this this machinery works this way and these gears turn this way, and like, I really love how the labyrinth really feels connected, and the way you affect certain parts of the machinery affects other parts of the, I call it Divine Beast, but the labyrinth. I think that's really cool. But I had the same problem with that labyrinth also that I do with the Divine Beast, which is that it just looked the same as everything else. It doesn't, there's nothing visually about these dungeons, either this labyrinth or the Divine Beast, that is memorable in even a single way. And so I was having fun, and design-wise, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the labyrinth, but I just don't like the designs of these places. I miss the themed, I guess I miss the themed dungeons, or at least the dungeons with motifs in Zelda games prior, because they were more memorable. These guys, they feel like they're all cut from the same source.
You don't like the designs of the divines?
I guess that's it. I just like, that labyrinth didn't end up looking any different from the interior of an actual Divine Beast, and I'm just like, man, I wish they could have done something maybe at least visually different for this one labyrinth, maybe. But yeah, it just ended up looking like another Divine Beast, and I already thought those kind of looked boring from the interior, so I didn't, the visual design of the place didn't do much for me, but I have to say, from a gameplay standpoint, I actually quite enjoyed the new dungeon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there were some fun puzzles in there, figuring it out, I see how they interconnected, working from one to the next. It was a good time. It was fun to do, but you're right, it is not visually interesting. Like, I'm trying to, I remember puzzle elements, but design-wise, it just is a mush.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, when I first got to the first Divine Beast, I thought it was actually pretty cool because it was novel. But then you get to the rest from a design perspective, and they all look basically the same, so it does feel repetitive. But I'm actually, I know a lot of people hate on the Divine Beasts. I actually kind of like the ideas of them in general. Like, I love the universal elements, the universal controls you have, especially in this, or, at least as much in the new one as well, where you can control the rotation. I thought that was a really cool idea. And I do like how the temples in Breath of the Wild, or the Divine Beasts, how they are interconnected in a way that the past Zelda game, or most past Zelda dungeons, really haven't been. Like, most of them, like, you go room to room to room, and they feel completely separated from each other. But here, there really is a universal element, and I like that. But yeah, I wish they had mixed up a little bit more for the new one here, just so we have something different to look at. And in this one, you don't even have like cool scenery to look at from the outside, like the other ones. Which take place in the world itself. Here, there's nothing to look at. So
right.
Yeah, I look forward to them taking the idea of the Divine Beast and just making something more visually interesting, and distinct from one another.
Okay, now before we get to what happens after you beat the Divine Beast here, we haven't touched on the boss fights too much, where you fight each of the blights from the Divine Beast once again, but with a different inventory and limited items like recovery items, and I guess they're a little bit tougher, maybe, I don't know, a little bit different. What did you guys think of fighting the blights again?
The first time you do it, they can be a little, like, some are a little tricky, like trying to figure out Thunderblight Ganon again, getting that right, getting that down, figuring out how to take down Waterblight Ganon. Fireblight Ganon was a piece of cake for me, but that first time. But yeah, you'll have easier times with certain ones compared to others. it seems, most of the time. And the thing is, I had to fight them over and over again because to get that extra dialogue. So by the end of it, I was able to take down all of them with relative ease. But the thing I don't know if I noticed this right away, but I liked it as I was refighting it. I like how they're basically a simulation of this is how the champion had to fight this beast. Or how to fight the Blight. Like the fact that you're limited to their inventory and they might have lost, but you can overcome it.
That is cool.
Mm-hmm. I did, yeah, I like that element of it, and yeah, it's funny, the only refight I actually ended up having trouble with was not the one I thought I would, which was Thunder Blight. Water Blight was the one I actually had trouble with, because of your limited resources. The weapons you get are so, you barely have enough to whittle down its health. So Water Blight was actually the one I had trouble with, but the others I actually found to come kind of easily, and I was fine fighting him again. I mean, you really... I feel like the boss fights with them can potentially go quickly anyway when you first fight them, depending, because of Breath of the Wild's absolutely insane difficulty balance. Like, it can be the hardest game or the easiest game, depending on how you play it. So I feel like for some people, they probably blew through those boss fights. Like myself, I absolutely demolished them because I was way too strong for them my first time through. So it was actually kind of nice getting to go back and fight them on more even terms, even if they still ended up being a little easy for me, because I still had all the heart containers and stuff. It was nice fighting them on more even terms, and I got to hear their crazy good boss themes again, so that was nice. Yeah.
I think I pretty much agree with all of that. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of the Blights originally, so I was really dreading fighting them again, but most of them were pushovers this time, so I was okay with it, except for the Water Blights you mentioned. I'm curious how you guys dealt with this guy. What I ended up doing is, in the second portion of the battle, so at one point, by the way, I was like down to my final few hearts. I had already used the one ability that recovers your health fully, and I was out of health recovering items. So what I ended up doing is somehow, but I tried doing it again later and it didn't work. But I was able to use
Rivali's Gale, yeah.
Yeah, I was able to fly up to these rafters and just wait around up there, and I was able to wait for all my powers to recover, and I could go back into the fight and do it again.
Wow.
My strategy was once I got to that second part is to use Rivali's Gale, get some upward momentum, then go into the slow-mo arrow shot so I could stun him and get close and beat on him. Otherwise, get in close and then Urbosa's Fury, which I never used Urbosa's Fury as much as I did during these bosses.
Same here. Yep, I depended on them, especially in that one. Yeah, that was the key thing. And one time I was gearing up for it, and as he was falling down after I'd attacked him, and he fell into the lava, and my attack completely missed. I'm like, well, that sucks. I'm screwed now.
Yeah. That's what I ended up doing. I actually just got in, I whittled down his health enough, and then, I had the hardest time figuring out how to deal with his multiple ice blocks when you don't have the arrows to shoot them down with. And so I kept taking a ton of damage, and that was the one refight I did die in. I didn't die in the other three, but Water Blight I died once. But I ended up just kind of brute forcing it, and I just got in close, and I used Urbosa's Fury. And I had gotten it down to the point where, one more Urbosa's Fury, or one Urbosa's Fury was enough to do it.
Nice.
So there's an easy way to take out those ice things.
Oh, yeah?
Use your Cryonis on it. You'll break them apart instantly.
Oh, that makes sense. So just like breaking your own blocks, you can break hit. Oh, that's so annoying.
I did not realize that either, because you could do the same thing when you're riding Sidon during the main game, and then I saw people mention, you could just use that rather than the arrows. I'm like, okay, taking that away.
Oh wait, you guys didn't do that during the main game either?
No, I used arrows during the main game, and then I found out that you could use Cryonis.
Because during that boss fight, I was watching you actually stream that one, Derek, and I was like, screaming. I'm like, just use your Cryonis.
I didn't think about that. I was just trying to get around it. I was trying to shoot in the eye.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess it's time to talk about the final boss of the DLC. Once you beat the Divine Beast, you take on a Sheikah, like one of the monks. What did you... so, Ash, I know you were in particular surprised by this because you didn't know about this before. So what was your reaction to that happening?
I thought it was cool. I'm like, hey, this is a neat surprise. Like, this feels like the right way to end this DLC. You've met up to 120 of these monks throughout, your time with this game. And, yeah, you get to fight one at the end and see what these guys are capable of. Even then, after they're millennia old, they can still put up a really good fight. And I thought it was a cool... Like, you get a new setting. You get this really epic setting way up above Hyrule on this floating platform. It's raining, and the boss itself is, almost completely new. Some of the attacks you could tell, are repurposed from other bosses, like he has Thunder Blight's quick warping attack and things like that. But mostly, it's a completely new fight, and with a completely new boss. I thought the music was cool, the setting was cool, and like he was a fun boss to fight.
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly challenging because again, by the end of the game, I had a million healing items and the best armor and stuff, so it's not like it was that hard.
You didn't die to him?
No, I didn't die to him.
Okay, wow.
No, I didn't die either.
But I still thought it was fun, and it was fun figuring out how to, damage him and just figuring out what he can do and how to get the fight done, and I enjoyed it.
I did too. I thought it was a creative boss battle. It's probably my favorite boss in the game, actually, the main one. Like, I
Yeah,
like it
I'd
way
agree
better
with
than the
that.
Blights and probably even Ganon. So
I think I still rank Calamity Ganon, the first form of the final boss, is my favorite fight in the game. But Maz Koshi, I think that's his name, the monk, might be like a close second. It was a really cool fight.
Yeah, it was. Like, all the different tactics he was pulling out, having all his minions, clones that you had to fight through and figure out which one was the right one. It was just, like, I liked different stages. Like, he was always changing it up in some way, which kept the fight interesting and unique and new, even though I was fully powered up and ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I really liked it. I thought it was a really cool way to kind of end the DLC.
yeah, it was a fun little twist, like one final subversion of your expectations, because this wasn't a typical monk. So
Well, yeah, and as soon as he doesn't fade away like the others, it's like the camera pans in close on his hand, he starts moving his fingers, and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? He's not fading away like the other ones. What's gonna happen here? It was cool. I like the way they did it.
now, after you beat him, that's when you get the ending, if you want to call it that, to the DLC. And there were also cutscenes after each of the Divine Beasts as well, leading up to it. So I think there were probably five main cutscenes, I guess, across the DLC. Yeah. Each one maybe 2 minutes or so, 2 or 3 minutes. What did you guys think of those? Like, what did you think of the story, if you want to call it that, as part of the DLC?
I guess the recruitment of each of them was interesting, and I liked how you got just that little bit more personality for each champion that we really were hungry for during the main game. It's not a lot, but you can see Urbosa's connection to Zelda's mother. You see how Daruk is scared of dogs. You see how Rivali really does push himself, and Mipha, how she does have this stern side. And how she acted with Sidon. Like, there's some really great character moments in there. As far as the story,
Yeah, it's funny. It's very much mirrors the main game, where the best story bits are hidden in the champion's diary. So you have to read the best story bits, not necessarily watch them. Which is much like the main game. Like the main game, the best story bits come from little scraps of paper or Zelda's diary or things you may completely miss and not necessarily memories.
Oh, I didn't even come across the diaries in my playtime of the DLC, even though I knew they were there from Derek's stream. So.
Oh, see, I searched them all out. Like, I wanted to get every little bit of story I could. The cutscenes themselves were cool, and I mean they were beautifully choreographed. I loved watching Rivali fly around, and the music was great.
Yeah.
I loved Mipha's cutscene where she's swimming up the waterfall. So good. Like, they're beautiful to watch. I just don't know how much story value they necessarily have, which kind of goes back into maybe the way the expectations for this DLC were, messaged incorrectly by Nintendo.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I agree with all that. I actually quite like the cutscenes. I think they might be my favorite in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish it were in the base game. I think that would have actually slightly improved my perception of those characters, at least, because it feels like you barely know who they are when you're playing through it, and this would have helped. So I thought they were cool. I really like how the characters interact with each other, because you're getting these cutscenes in a relatively short amount of gameplay compared to the base game, where you may go dozens of hours before seeing one. So I like that. But yeah, there is a larger point, Ash, of there really isn't any story here. There isn't, like, you're not learning any new revelations about this game or the history of this world or really anything about it.
But Daruk is afraid of dogs.
That's crucial, right?
It's crucial.
It'll be kind of amazing when if one of the Blights are just a dog and that's why he failed. He's like, I can't deal with this, I'm out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's the thing that makes it disappointing overall is. For me, like, I still enjoyed it, like, more than my initial impressions would have led me or anyone else to believe, probably. I had a good time with it, but it's still disappointing in that it doesn't really do anything new. Like, it's just offering the same types of challenges, for the most part, that the base game already did, just in a slightly more structured fashion. And while I like those cutscenes, they don't flesh out the world. So, I mean, I still wish they had done something more elaborate, with an actual story, like something. I mean, I think a lot of people were expecting something post Ganon. Give it something new to do.
Either post Ganon or some sort of sequence that happens during Ganon's takeover.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people like hoping for a new area, and I wasn't necessarily even expecting that myself, but that would have been cool. Like even like a new island or something. Maybe somewhat around the Great Plateau size.
I wasn't really feeling like too upset that we didn't get a new area until I saw the final cutscene you get once you do beat the DLC, where you see they take that picture together and you see the actual castle town, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, looking at that, I was like, man, that'd be fun to explore.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a new area, but like because it's called the Champions Ballad, and I think I was just hoping for obviously more story, but I was just hoping for more of the champions. Like Nintendo did a good job making these characters people I care about. Like I wanted to see more of Link and Zelda interacting with the champions because they seem to have such a great camaraderie, like their friendship and I want to see more of them interacting because that, to me, was the most interesting part of the story that we got to see. Like, that's the thing is, and we've talked about how, like, there could be a good story here, but they just don't let you see any of it.
Yeah.
And I left the DLC wanting even more of the champions, maybe minus Rivali, because damn if you read his diary, he is an actual asshole. Like, he was worse than I thought.
Ash, that wasn't written by him.
Well, fair enough. Yeah.
I don't know if you watched all the cutscenes I put out when you rebeat the bosses. But at one point,
no, I didn't actually.
That's not written by me.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, well, that's good. I was actually going to go back and watch those because I hadn't seen those yet. But yeah, but in general, it gave me more time with the champions who I want to know more about. Like, straight up, I'm feeling vindicated. You guys were like talking crap about Mipha earlier. Mipha's awesome, and her new cutscene proves it. So I'm just saying, I'm feeling vindicated.
I would say she was better in this cutscene. I actually didn't detest her like I did in the main game. So
I like that she actually was able to raise her voice and get away from the airy dialogue and that extra stuff when she says, "Don't read my diary" and stuff like that. And like,
I think that was it. She felt more like a proper character to me in this than she did in the main game, where she felt I don't know, she just felt like
a wilting flower.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, that's fair. I actually wanted to see more of Mipha in action because the way she swam up the waterfall, like I want to see her fighting monsters like in a watery area because I feel like she'd be a total badass.
One of the dialogue that you do get from her, she said the reason that she fell is that she got ambushed. She was not prepared at all.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't get any of this dialogue. Like, I need to go back and watch your video, Derek, because I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't get any of this dialogue.
Oh, that's because you have to refight the bosses how many times? So.
Oh, is that so? You just keep refighting them? Is that what it is?
Okay. Yeah, you can go back and refight them, and that's how you get that dialogue. So.
Oh, gotcha.
I fought each one 6 times, but you only need to refight them 5 times to see each of them.
Oh, dialogues. Jesus, God, 5 times you went. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that sounds so tedious. So
yeah.
Hey, that's why the video's there. Nobody has to do it again.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. So I would hope next time Nintendo sets a little bit grander ambitions for their DLC, at least or especially if you're going to announce it as story DLC or whatever they called it initially. That led to far grander impressions than what I think it ended up being. And I still liked it in spite of that, but I still hope for more. So I think Nintendo just needs to work on their messaging a little bit more. Like, they were more transparent about what it was going to be.
Yeah, they'd said maybe just learn more about the champions rather than new story.
That would have been a better way. That probably been a better way of putting it. Although that may have still led to some people to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to temper expectations because people are going to think the world.
Yeah.
It would be like learn more asterisk, and then next to the asterisk, like the fact that Daruk is a dog. About the champions, like nothing
Daruk
important
is a
about
dog.
Them. Or sorry, is afraid of dogs.
Right.
But yeah, like nothing necessarily that important about them.
Yeah. Okay, there's one final part really of the DLC we haven't touched on yet, and that is the thing that comes at the very end, being the Master Cycle 0. This is the final reward you get for beating it. What did you guys think of riding around Hyrule on a hog?
I felt it's cool. I mean, I think it's a cool reward. I think I felt slightly deflated only because it wasn't quite as fast as I maybe thought it would be.
Yeah.
And there isn't, and the jump feels kind of lame. Like, you can't really do much of a jump. It's not really that fast. So I kind of feel like I was expecting a little more from it, but it's still a cool reward. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally agree. Like, I think it's a cool reward. I think it'd been a really cool reward if we didn't know about it going in. But once I finally got to it, I'm like, oh, it's actually not. It's cool. It's not that fun though. It's not as fun as I was expecting it to be. Especially since I really have nowhere to go with it. I beat it again.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the bigger issue is that, like, all right, we've explored everywhere. especially if you found all the shrines like Ash and I. It's like, I mean, it's cool. I'm glad it can fall from a huge distance and survive, and it's basically a dirt bike because this thing just does not get stopped by pretty much anything other than water and walls.
Yeah.
Water
So
and walls.
I like that durability of it. And I like that you have basically all the functionality you have on a horse on this motorcycle as well.
Yeah.
But I don't have anywhere to go.
I do wish there was like, I mean, and this is just, pie in the sky, like asking for more and more, but I do think it would have been cool if like the Master Cycle Zero wasn't necessarily the end and it continued, and like maybe there was a sequence where like a chase sequence somehow, assuming they could bake it into the story somehow, where you actually do need to use the Master Cycle Zero in a specific sequence and you're dodging, I don't know, Guardian Blasts and I don't know, I'm just thinking of random things here. I don't know how this would all come together, but you know what I mean.
No, I actually love the idea because one of my favorite things to do on the Master Cycle Zero was just to drive around the Guardian and just, like get cool angles and find their laser blasts at me. So they had actually structured the challenge with that in mind. That could have been awesome. I don't know, I just pop up some like dirt bike island or something somewhere and throw some Guardians onto it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Like, here's another trial. I mean, these Sheikah love their damn trials. So they could just do another trial. Like, hey, okay, you're done with this trial. Here's another trial.
True.
Go right on this island and don't get killed.
Yeah.
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 I agree. All right, guys. Well, any final thoughts overall about the DLC in general? Anything like whether it's something we need to touch on or something you'd expect from them in the future for future DLC? Anything else you want to bring up here?
I can't think of anything like as far as what they do in the future, because whatever this next game is definitely going to be a slightly different beast from what Breath of the Wild is.
Divine
So hopefully
beast.
yeah, exactly. And I'm sure they'll learn their lessons from this, take what people liked and see what they can do and how they move on from that. So I don't really have anything to say about that. We'll have to see the structure of the next Zelda game before I think about how they want to structure the next DLC. I like how they have all the extra clothes and stuff that you can change into, although they did overlook the fact that if you got every single piece of equipment for like Link to wear, you can't carry it all. You are, I think, 9 slots short, which does seem like a pretty major oversight, and hopefully they'll patch that and fix it so people can actually have everything on them all at once. Otherwise, though, like I said in my review, I like this DLC. I think it was a nice addition, but it didn't. It was a nice way to come back to it, but it's not gonna be like, oh man, I love it. It was a fun return to a fun return to Hyrule and Breath of the Wild. I'm actually curious what you guys would have reviewed it now that you've beaten it.
I would have given it a like. Yeah, I mean, I liked it. My main issues still are with how they announced it and how they actually put it into the game. I wish it did exist more of its own thing, like post-Ganon or something. But despite that, I had a good time. I enjoyed my time with it. So.
Yeah, I would have given it a like it too. Like I obviously have problems with it. I hate the one-hit obliterator nonsense, and we've gone over other stuff. I mean, there are things I don't like about it, but overall, I did enjoy it. I think it was mismessaged a bit. I think some of the expectations were unfairly colored by Nintendo. But I have to say, as much as it didn't necessarily add to the story, I also did enjoy, like that last cutscene got me a little bit. Like I was like, oh, that's actually kind of sweet. It was nice, and like they take the picture, and again, it just made me. It was a nice way to come back to Breath of the Wild because it was one more, go around with these characters, and I'm like, man, I want to see more of these characters interacting. So if Nintendo does any more DLC for Breath of the Wild next year, I hope it's more along the lines of what you're thinking, Andre, where, I get why they did things that could be baked into the existing world. I get why they chose that. But if they do another thing, I would like it to be a separate experience where you just choose it, and it takes place in the past, or it takes place in the future after Ganon's beaten. But I want another episode that doesn't,
Or do a thing like Link's Awakening, where you go on another adventure for whatever reason, and you end up on an island, and there's like this, not a small island as they have around Hyrule here, but something a little bit more meaty that you can explore and have new things to find.
Yeah. But I mean, overall though, I did like it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do more. That's the thing, is I don't know if they're going to do more DLC for this, or if they're just going to start moving on to their next game. But
I think
it was.
Oh yeah, I'm totally before the end of the Switch. I'm expecting a Majora's Mask equivalent.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah.
I would hope so. I'd be totally cool with that. Like, especially if it's like as off the wall as Majora's Mask was, like something.
Bring in the aliens. Bring in the aliens from those concepts.
Yeah,
exactly.
Now I do have a question for you guys, especially you, Andre, before we wrap up. Now, obviously, we agree that the way it was messaged didn't work. We agree on the things that Nintendo did wrong. But at the end of the day, to bring it back to our original discussion, I have to. Was it worth the $20? This and Trial of the Sword?
It's so weird. This is why I hate valuing things based on money, because it's different for everyone. It's so weird to look at it this way. I would say yes. I mean, yes, I enjoyed my time with it. I thought it was. I don't regret the $20 I dropped on it. I probably would have had I never played through it. yeah. But no, the fact I played through, I enjoyed it. Yes, I think it was worth it. I don't think you need to play this. I don't think it offers that much beyond what the game already does. But it is weird though if you consider it within the context of what you already paid for the game. Where you spent $60 on a game that provided you with hundreds of hours of gameplay. By that comparison, it's actually a pretty poor deal. But I don't know if that's really fair, considering how if you look at that,
is a little bit more focused.
Breath of the Wild is a pretty good deal, but that's standard then. So
well then, okay, I guess maybe the better way to frame it. You're right. Was it worth 20? Is not a good way to phrase that question, because
it's a fine question. I mean,
Oh yeah, and the thing is, this is meaty DLC. I mean, Champions Ballad on its own took us. Will take you between 7 to 9 hours, I think, depending on how much trouble how hung up you get on certain aspects of it. And Master Trials, again, will take another 4 to 5 hours just complete. So that's pretty meaty, along with all the other stuff that you can pick up.
I mean, I guess to put it into perspective, I think the new Resident Evil 7 DLC just came out. I think it's called Not a Hero and End of Zoe. And from what I understand, those are what are they, 15? Or no, I think they're $5. I think they're $5, but I think they're an hour. I think they both last an hour each. And I have to say, the Zelda DLC ended up being a lot meatier than I was necessarily expecting. It really does last.
So, I agree. It's actually meatier than I thought it would be too, just in terms of, I hate that term, meteor, though. In terms of, the amount of things you have to do, there's a fair amount to it. But again, most of what you're doing doesn't amount to much more than what you've already done in the game. You're not seeing too many things profoundly new here. So I'm looking at, I haven't played myself, but I'm still working my way through the main game, being Horizon Zero Dawn. But I saw a lot of comparisons to, or a lot of people bring up the Frozen Wilds, the DLC that just came out for that game too. And that game, to my knowledge, that DLC exists as more of its own thing, more of its own story. I think more along the lines of what we were expecting from Zelda Breath of the Wild. It
kind of does. It's not a sequel, as I and some fans were hoping. It actually does take place concurrently with the main story and not necessarily after it. But it is self-contained. There is a new place on the map that you go into, and all the new content is there.
Yeah, it's kind of like how when I played Rise of the Tomb Raider on PS4. It included all the DLC that had come with that, and so it's almost like its own sort of quest line, which is also kind of what Zelda does. It's just that there's a bit more story to this one. It's almost like this filler episode.
Well, and the difference with Zelda is that the new quest line takes place in the existing world that you've explored, whereas in Horizon, the new quest line is completely in this new area of the map.
Yeah, and there is that as well for Rise of the Tomb Raider, where it is brand new stuff that they designed for it. So yeah.
So, I think it is an interesting comparison, because it looks like, from what I'm looking at, and again, I haven't played it myself, but it looks like the playtime estimate for that DLC is 10 to 20 hours. Apparently, GameSpot beat it in 12. That's still a bit longer than any of us spent with this Zelda DLC, I think. And that does take place in its own region, apparently, as you guys are saying. So I think that is more along the lines of what people are expecting from Zelda Breath of the Wilds. So I think as an interesting comparison, seeing as it seems like that may be a better deal, I suppose, if you want to compare DLCs.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I haven't played the Frozen Wilds on my list,
yeah.
and I want to, because obviously I loved Horizon. But I will say, I mean, I played all the DLC at once, so I did DLC Pack in 1 and 2 together, kind of one after the other. And all told, I think I added between 20 and 25 hours to my game clock, which is,
I mean, I guess that's a good point. I did forget about Pack 1, because nothing that interested me, and I didn't bother with it at all.
Yeah.
I think besides finding some of the gear out in the world. So I guess that is true if you count all that value. But I mean, this is part of the problem with comparing playtimes to monetary value.
Totally.
I don't care. I don't care how much gameplay I get out, how much
money
I
have
spend.
Fun?
It's how much fun did I have, exactly. And I enjoyed the Zelda Breath of the Wild's DLC. I was still hoping for more. I feel like it could have been much grander than it was. I enjoyed it, but yeah, I mean, I liked it, but I would have loved it if I had loved it, obviously.
Yeah.
So
I think it's kind of where we all landed on it. We liked it, but we were just hoping for a little more in certain ways.
Yeah. So maybe not bad. Maybe not, the worst starting point for Zelda DLC, but I hope they do aim their sights a little bit higher in the future. Do like the idea of keeping it more segmented from the main game, especially because that way it doesn't introduce questions of, like, should I buy this in order to enhance my experience in my first playthrough? I hate having to ask that question to myself. And I didn't, because I beat the game before the DLC came out, obviously. But I would prefer that weren't an option at all. So I do like how seemingly Horizon Zero Dawn handled it, with it being it's more of its own thing.
Yeah, and that would be a good discussion to have, Andre, if you and I get a chance to both play it.
It's true. I need to go back and finish the main game. I was really enjoying it. I just got sidetracked by actual work again, I think.
I feel like it's actually kind of rare that you and I enjoy the same non-Nintendo games, so that would actually be a really fun discussion to have once you finish the story in Horizon.
Only a year late.
I know, a year later. Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. All right. I think we're about done here. So thanks, guys, for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure and like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to those in the description below as a good way to keep up to date on everything we post. And of course, make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Zelda stuff in the future and everything else Nintendo as well. Catch you later. Bye.